navigate to home.avalara.com. This will give you access to your account in Avalara. A couple things we need to set up in Avalara in order to connect to M.O.M are the API keys, nexus, and the company locations. You can find them by doing the following. Under settings, we have license and API keys. If you go ahead and click on that menu option, it'll get you to this location, license keys, and you'd be able to generate a new license key. You would generate a new one, take note of that information, and then also take note of the account information right here. Once you've recorded that, you can go ahead and continue by setting up your nexus where you collect tax. Within the screen, you can see I have defined multiple locations or nexuses for my company. You can do so by clicking on this option here to add where you collect taxes and use tax. By doing that, it'll add it to the list. Once that's completed, the last thing you want to do in Avalara is define your company locations. The company locations allows you to define your main location of the company. In our case, we have 9 Campus Drive, Parsippany, New Jersey. Once that's set up, you can also set up marketplaces if you sell on Amazon and eBay and such. In this case, we're selling on Amazon. Once that's all set up, that's all you need in the Avalara side in order to connect. Obviously, there are other options in Avalara that you might want to set up to make sure your account is up and running. But as far as what we need to connect to M.O.M, those are the main 3 things that we need to do. So we're going to go ahead and go to the M.O.M side. You can navigate to maintain accounting information and the Avalara interface, and go ahead and go to account settings. Within account settings, we've collected the information we got from our initial setup from Avalara, so the account information and the license key. You go ahead and populate all the address information, and once that's done, you can activate this account. This way, M.O.M will start calculating the tax using Avalara. You also have other options here to use the M.O.M tax sales module if there is an issue with Avalara, so there's an add-on that you can use. You also want to make sure that you send invoices to Avalara, so that way at the end of the day, once all the information is completed, sales information is completed, you can send it over to Avalara. We also have a prefix that you can use. That way you can identify all the different transactions that you might have from Avalara. And this is useful if you have multiple channels that you're using with Avalara, so that way you can identify which invoice is coming from what particular channel. You also have different codes for your dollar off promotion, so you can define the different product tax code that you want to use for it. Same thing for shipping. And if you use Amazon, you have an option here to upload directly from M.O.M, or you can have Amazon upload directly from Avalara. So it's really up to you on how you want to handle those particular transactions. Once that's all set up, you want to go ahead and test connection, making sure that you are able to connect to your Avalara store. Once you have it successful here, you can go ahead, go over to this tab. In this example, you could run the number of transactions that's done in M.O.M. So in Avalara, an API call is a transaction, and typically the way they do pricing is number of transaction or invoices. So the way they explain it in their help side is every 10 transaction equals 1 invoice. So that's how they kind of give you the pricing on their side. But here, M.O.M gives you a visibility on how many transactions you did so far, so you see if you fall in a particular threshold on their side. Nexus location. This is something that you set up earlier. Once the Nexus location is set up in Avalara, you simply hit load Nexus. This will call your account and also load that in M.O.M. So now M.O.M knows which locations you have Nexus and charge the tax accordingly. You can also load the product class tax code. So you can hit load product tax code here, and this will populate all the information within the M.O.M system so that we have all the tax code, and then you can obviously assign that to your items or stock items individually, or you can do it in bulk. There's an option to do that. On the customer side, if they have exemptions, you can load the entity use codes, which will populate this table, and then you can also attach that to the customer record. So that way, when a particular customer uses that particular code and it falls in that, they will get their exemptions. And we saw the company location, so you can see once we load the locations, they'll know where we're shipping from. And the last thing, and this is a newer feature that we offer, is to exempt orders to be uploaded to Avalara based on a couple of things. You can actually do it based on source key or order type. That way, if you have certain channels that's already uploading invoices to Avalara, you can also exclude them in M.O.M. That way, when you do the invoice upload, you don't do double reporting. So it's a nice little tool here that we have. So once that's set up, a couple of things that you need to set up here is just the product and the customer. So we'll go to the product first. Within the product setup, if you have different category tax code, you could actually go here on the general tab. There is a tax code dropdown based on the tax code that we just loaded. You would pick the appropriate tax code for this particular product and then save out of it. Once that's saved, that particular product will now follow that particular tax code across the different states or nexuses that you might have set up in the system. Next thing here is a customer. Look up a customer. Within the financial tab, there is also the entity use code that we talked about. So if this customer is exempt for some reason, you can choose one of these particular options, and that way when they process orders and if they qualify for that entity use code, then they will be exempt from the transaction. Once that's all set up, we're ready to take an order, and all it really does is calculate tax. So you would make a new order here. M is my favorite item. So once we have our order here, you can see once we have the item, the address, which is the customer, and the pay method and ship method, it will calculate the taxes for you. So this is using Avalara's tax calculation at the moment. So once we have all the information, M.O.M makes a call to Avalara and calculate tax. And M.O.M will also make a call every time you make a changes here, because then it has to recalculate the order. Once that's done and you process that order and that sale is completed, you would navigate back to maintain accounting information, Avalara here, and you would be able to upload that transaction back to Avalara. So typically, you would do this towards the end of the day. You would highlight the different transactions you want to send to Avalara, so that way Avalara has a record of it, and that way you can use that for your reports. So depending on how many nexuses you have defined, Avalara will then use the reports to kind of help you report to those particular nexuses. So that's really the process. So you saw that our system will calculate tax and then also upload the invoice up to Avalara. Once that's processed, that completes the cycle. But a couple more things I want to show here. Within Avalara, I mentioned earlier, you can assign tax code to stock items. So you can do it individually or you can do it in bulk. So you can see everything that is in BigCommerce for me. I can process. I can give it a particular code, so that way you're not doing it one at a time. So this is a nice tool. So you can assign product tax code in bulk. You simply pick the code that you want to apply, you apply it, and then you hit process. And the last thing I want to show is just the historical part. You can actually use create transaction for historical orders. So maybe you just started using Avalara with us and you want to, let's say, create transactions for the beginning of the month because you started using Avalara in the middle of the month. So you can check this, include invoice transaction in states where they're not invoice if you like, or you can uncheck that, so that way it only creates invoices based on the nexus that you've defined. You can select orders, and you have this selection criteria where you can define the range that you want to do. You want to do invoice date range, So typically in the example that we just talked about, where I might be coming in to use the module in the middle of the month, and I want to actually include the transaction had since the beginning of the month or further, you can define the range that you want. And then once that's defined, you hit process, it'll generate a bunch of orders that you can upload to Avalara. So that is our Avalara module. So if you have any questions on this, you can reach out to sales@freestylesolutions.com. Thank you and have a nice day.